I'm Dr. Tom Hoffman, Professor of Political Science. I've been here at St. Mary's University I'm in my 29th year. And I teach a variety of courses. And some of which deal with religion and politics, and what we're going to talk about deal exactly with religion and politics. The case that we're talking about, of course, is Snyder versus Phelps, in which the Westboro Baptist Church congregation showed up at a dead Marine's funeral, protesting the funeral. And actually, they weren't protesting. You would think, when I first read about this, I thought, oh, maybe they're protesting the war, or maybe they're protesting. That's what my natural thing was. So they're probably out there with signs saying, stop the war in Iraq. But no, those signs didn't say that. Those signs said, thank God for dead soldiers and things of that sort. And I said, what in the world is this about? And so I began to look into it and found that this particular church thinks that God hates the United States, thinks that God is causing the death of our soldiers in Iraq and in Afghanistan, because God is mad because the United States is not condemning and locking up and persecuting homosexuals. This same group has protested against the Pope when he was here on his visit. It has protested various activities, and this, in fact, they've conducted more than 473 protests with signs like God hates, well, I'm not going to use that word, but that God hates homosexuals, and they use a rather negative word for homosexuals. And so what has occurred is in Illinois, the Phelps family, because basically it's just only 70 members of this church, showed up at Corporal Snyder's funeral, and with their signs at the Catholic Church, and also signs, by the way, that also protested or made various slurs against the Catholic Church as well. And the Snyder family didn't stand for it, so they filed suit against them for emotional distress, for disruption of the funeral, and the courts in Illinois found for them, and basically the Federal Circuit Court awarded them $5 million. Anybody has the right to say anything or put anything on signs, no matter how stupid it is. And the folks from this church indeed have that right, because when we begin to suppress freedom of speech, we begin to suppress freedom of thought, and that goes down a very, very slippery slope. There was nothing obscene on the signs. Now you can say you cannot put obscenities on signs. Now you mentioned in your question, do these signs incite to illegal action? In terms of the various protests that the church, Westboro Church, has sponsored, to my knowledge, in my research, there's only been one case where there was some illegal action, and that was and it was not at this funeral, but it was another funeral that they were protesting, where one of the Phelps family members, the son, or maybe, I'm not sure which member of the family it was, spit into the face of one of the people that were at a funeral. He was arrested and charged and convicted. And so when there has been illegal action, the police have stepped in. But interestingly enough, given your question, do the signs incite violence? It actually was one of the carrier of the signs that did the illegal action, not one of the people that these signs were directed at. Actually, John Stuart Mill wrote after our Constitution was written, and he was enunciating some of the principles that help us to understand the utility of liberty, and the usefulness of liberty. And one of the things that is useful about liberty is that the conflict between ideas allows truth to emerge. And if we begin to suppress ideas of any kind, if we may consider them absurd, we may consider them bad, we may consider them stupid, it doesn't matter. Whatever, according to Mill, all ideas should be allowed to in the public forum. And why they need to be allowed is because through the conflict of ideas, truth is allowed to emerge. And once we have truth, if truth still continues to be in conflict with ideas, then it is strengthened. And so yes, even the obnoxious idea that God doesn't love everyone needs to be able to be stated just so that truth can emerge, so they can come into conflict with the experience of the entire human the entire human experience of God's love for us, in conflict with that, and perhaps the truth is strengthened even more from that. General principles is, yes, liberty needs to be preserved, even if it is offensive to others. However, in this case, we have the balancing of liberties. We have conflict between two liberties: the liberty of freedom of speech and the liberty of freedom of religion. And we have freedom of religion, and because this is at a funeral, and the right of privacy of people at a funeral, the right of private persons at a funeral to practice their religion, and then the right of people to be able to espouse their points of view. So we have two sets of liberties in conflict, and it's going to be up to the Supreme Court to see which side they fall down on, or unless they come up with something magically that balances both of them.